I'm John Lenz. Welcome to our first of many Green Velvet Chats, a new series that we're starting out where we meet with business leaders to discuss trends and insights and only important things in these lovely Green Velvet chairs. I'm here with Mike Jones, a friend, founder, and first-time guest on the Green Velvet Chat. Hi, Mike. How are you? Thanks for being here.
Thanks, John. Good to have you.
Mike, can you we talk and text more than most people know. Can you give our audience a little background on who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so my name is Mike Jones. I'm a founder, as you mentioned, of 3 companies. I grew up in the DC area, was in the Marine Corps out of college, got an MBA, and got a job at 3M, which is what moved me to Minnesota, which made us neighbors, figuratively speaking. And since then, I've started 3 companies, 2 in the fitness space. I started the first CrossFit gym in St. Paul and the first CrossFit gym in Minneapolis, grew that to be a 4-location business, and then sold it. And I started my own fitness brand, a boutique fitness company called Alchemy 365, which has 4 locations here in Minneapolis and 4 in Denver. Since launching and scaling that company, I've stepped down and done a couple odd entrepreneurial projects and gradually found my way to become a full-time EOS implementer, which is a small business coach for companies that want to implement the business system EOS.
EOS being?
Entrepreneurial Operating System.
Cool.
Entrepreneurial Operating System. And what we do is we help small businesses get what we call 3 things: vision, traction, healthy. And vision is getting everybody 100% on the same page with where they're going and how they're going to get there. Traction is instilling discipline and accountability so that everyone's moving in the same direction. And healthy is building fun-loving, cohesive teams, because so often leadership teams are not fun-loving, cohesive.
So I know this, but what led you to take the leap and become, rather than a founder and building businesses, become an EOS implementer and help guide and coach others to do so?
I built companies for exactly, or almost exactly 10 years, full-time, post leaving corporate America. And I had a lot of wins, made a lot of mistakes like everybody does, had a lot of growth. I really loved it. And so when I transitioned out, the question mark was, do I want to keep running operating companies, or do I want to help other entrepreneurs, or something else? Mm-hmm. And so it was a really important question for me, because leading companies had always been what I had done, and that's what I trained for, getting an MBA and going into a big corporate environment. Ultimately, it was 2 things. One, trying it out. So I tried out work with other clients to see if I liked it, and I did. I liked the impact I had on teams. I liked the breadth of people I got to work with. I liked being able to work on high-level things all the time. So just enjoying it. Mm-hmm. And then the other one was taking an honest reflection on what I really love to do and questioning, do I love leading people and managing people? And the answer is yes, but not right now, meaning I really don't want to do that over the next 5-10 years. And I had to do a little work on myself to come to terms with that, because most external factors tell us that's what we're supposed to do. Yeah. But I really didn't want to. And so when I found the opportunity doing something I love, that I'm really good at, that I knew would be a challenge with really cool people, it was a pretty easy choice.
Mike, let's get into some experience-based feedback. I want to know some of the key growth strategies that you are seeing and are advising with your clients, and conversely, some of the common pitfalls. Do you want to start with one or the other?
Yeah, let's start with the growth strategies.
All right.
So I'll speak a little bit in my lane as EOS implementer, which
Sure.
is a business system that's meant to manage human energy. So it's all about how people are organized in organizations. So I don't really get too much into specific business strategy relative to the industry that they're in or anything like that, because everyone's in a different industry. And so the thing that I'll say is, for all organizations, they all will be limited by how good their people are. And so that's really 50 to 70% of all the things we talk about when we're implementing EOS, when we're working through issues, is getting the right people in the right seat. And to do that, what we do is we establish core values that companies actually use, feel, and can use to acquire the right people and repel the wrong people. If that's done well, then that whole right person thing gets a whole lot easier. And so I would say that's the main thing holding companies back, is inability to get great people that are the right fit into the seats.
Mike, I love that you brought up right people or right person, right seat. And you know this, but for our audience, breakthrough practice is something called scaling up. It is very similar to EOS, and actually Gino Wickman used to work for Vern Harnish. And so I think the joke is that Gino is just a better marketer on this system. But there's a lot of similarities, and I can say, in our experience, the first 6 to 12 months of adopting that system was really uncomfortable, because we were essentially putting together our VTO, or our one-page strategic plan, stress-tested core values, refined those, and really committed to them. They are so much more than just laminated phrases on a card. And then figuring out functional responsibilities, and do we truly have the right people in the right seat? Like, what are the functions that we have as a business? What do we need? And just assessing the people is just paramount. And I think your 50 to 70% stat, it feels high, but then applying it back to our business, it's pretty accurate. Talk to me about common pitfalls. So right people, right seat, aligning around core values, getting everyone organized. What are some common pitfalls that you can kind of help see working with your clients?
Well, people is the number one issue. So that's one of the reasons why I brought it up, is when in doubt, there's probably some kind of people issue. And it's whether it's a right person issue or right seat issue, okay? And so we talked about creating real core values that you actually stick to and actually hire people for. That'll eliminate most of your issues. And then the other one is finding the right seats for people. And so we call it the accountability chart. Other companies, other systems might call it the org chart. But what is the structure of the organization and who owns what? Getting clear there will eliminate a lot of the issues. And that is one of the other main pitfalls that I see organizations. Getting to the vision side, which you mentioned, being really important. One of the biggest pitfalls that I see is that companies don't have a clear vision. So they'll have a founder leading an organization and building it from scratch, has the vision so tight in their head, but has no ability, or has a limited ability, to communicate the vision so that people can understand it and want to be a part of it. So that's a really big pitfall as well, which is just establishing the vision so that everyone on the leadership team or team wants it, understands it, and wants to be part of it. So that's another one that comes to mind. Another one would be communicating, right? Which I think is one thing that you might have been getting at, which is if you're able to, one, come up with a vision that everyone's aligned on, then you have to communicate it. And we always say that you have to communicate 7 times before people hear it the first time, as a reminder for leaders. And it's really good to remind yourself, if you're a leader, if you've told someone the 3rd time and they're not hearing it, instead of getting annoyed with them, remind yourself you need to tell them 4 more times for them to hear it. And it's so comforting for a leader to be like, oh, I just need to tell them 4 more times. Like, they're not even close to getting it yet.
I've also heard when you're giving your vision or kind of sharing where your company's headed, you should do it at least as many times as there are people in your company. I think the 7 times is maybe a bit more applicable.
I like that.
Yeah, you got 25 people in your company. Expect to be saying that 25 times over the course of the year.
Yeah.
So talk to me about balancing company culture with the need for processes and systems.
So culture is built from the top, right? The founder, as they run and build their company, they're creating the culture, whether they are doing it purposefully or not. And so understanding that is really important, where culture is kind of a top-down built thing. And the best way to build that is to lead by example and model the kind of culture that you want people to have. And then, of course, as your team grows from 1 to 5 to 10 to 25, then you lose control over being a direct impact on the culture by example. And so it's through rules, norms, policies, procedures that build and enhance culture. And so based on that logic, I would say process and systems can and should be used to enhance culture, right? And so, there's infinite processes that companies have. They have hundreds of processes, some of them being their core processes that we would say are the 6 to 10 high-level processes that define how businesses actually operate. And I would say culture and how we do business should be considered in every process that we do. So I think they go hand in hand.
Thanks, Mike. I really like that you kind of mentioned that culture and processes do go hand in hand. I want to challenge and maybe expand your take on it coming solely from the top down. I'm a firm believer in that we, as business leaders or founders, you do set the vision and ideally the culture as well. However, when you get to a more significant size, I also think that the culture is enriched and is just as important to be modeled from the bottom up. What is your take?
Yeah, I agree for sure. I mean, I think of it as you start from one, that person who creates it is the entirety of the culture, and every day you add a person, it gets spread and spread, and it always remains top down, but as you get people who are aligned with the culture, they are meant to be a reinforcement of the culture, and you get to the point where there's so many people that there's teams that are dispersed, that there needs to be unifying theme of what that culture is to be reinforced. So yeah, I completely agree from the bottom up standpoint.
And I guess from the top down, probably the most critical aspect in my eyes would be consistency, which I think is very related to the accountability of a system or the impact on culture. Well, Mike, can we talk future trends? What trends do you see in the business landscape that leaders should know or be aware of, or things that you're consistently advising your clients on?
One trend that immediately comes to mind is the growth of the fractional executive with growth companies. And that's simply organizations as they grow, they need better and better talent. And they also need to build out their leadership teams with executives. And so you're going from founder-led to being executive leadership team-led. And one thing that's really rapidly happening is fractional executives are coming on to fill those seats during temporary periods of time while an organization is not ready to bring someone on full-time. So the classic example of that, the one that's kind of kicked it all off, was a fractional CFO, which is like a company that's $5 million in revenue that's growing pretty fast, doesn't need a full-time CFO until they get to, let's say, 20 million in revenue. And so that $15 million delta, which might take 5 years, how do they get strategic finance? They get a fractional. And so that kind of thing is starting to be used with really all different functions, to some better, some worse. But that's something that's really happening a lot that wasn't even a thing when I started my first company.
Do you want to reveal I have a hot take that we could reveal right now?
I would love to.
Fractionals used to just be called consultants. And then before that, they were just called yellow badgers.
Yellow badgers?
Yeah, your temporary yellow badge.
Oh, I like that.
But I do appreciate how fractional has, in a way, it seems like it's elevated the connotation.
Yeah. I mean, another trend that is often is it's on the lines of the fractional executive. It is the gig.
I was going to say people.
Yeah, the gig
I think
economy.
Talent shortage.
Yeah, talent shortage. Everyone has a side gig. People are all trying to become their own entrepreneur, even though they're not starting operating companies. They're just doing things. And so that, I think, is just dramatically changing the workforce, dramatically changing how organizations have to compensate people, reward people, create job descriptions. And so that's something that leaders and entrepreneurs and leadership teams can either fight it and try to stay with their old model prior to 5-10 years ago, or they can look to ways that they can leverage the way people want to work going forward and get more out of it.
The other trend that I would love your perspective on as a consultant, that I went to a conference about a month ago, then an Allied Executives event a week after that, and I got like 3 hours of an economist speaking at us over 4 business days I could have spaced that out a little bit better. But one thing they really high centered on is just the labor shortage. And both economists kind of shared that through 2030, they're kind of forecasting that we're going to be in a really tight labor market. There's a lot of implications to that. I'm interested in if you're seeing that or with your clients, or how they're effectively navigating that, or how you're advising on that as well.
Yeah, I'm seeing that with a lot of clients. I mean, especially it's industry specific. Some industries, they have a lot harder time finding the right people to fill their jobs. But across the board, I would say yes. And I think that there's a lot of macro trends that are involved here. One of which is the population wanting to spend their time working on multiple things and having multiple gigs that has really proliferated over the past 5 years. So that's going to continue. And we as leaders need to figure out how to make adjustments that work for our companies that can attract people in the right way.
Do you have a sense of your clients? I want to talk hybrid or not. Do you have a sense of your clients from on the spectrum of fully remote to fully in person, where your clients fall?
My clients are all over the place. So some fully in person, some fully remote, everything in between. And so what I've seen, I mean, the best I've seen is teams taking common sense approaches based on the needs of their industry, the needs of their organization, what they need in terms of culture building, team building, and then the realities of what their workforce wants and is able to be most productive at, and find some kind of unique approach that works for each individual organization. I've seen a lot of companies have policies go wrong where they just implement a policy and don't really take into account how people actually work anymore or what they want to do. And that's not people wanting to work fully remote at all. It's what's the in-between that works for everyone, that works for the organization. And I don't think it's that hard to find. I think what's hard is you've got all these external forces like your rent and the
commutes.
Commutes and the demands of your board and stuff like that. When if you had just like real, think like customer-centric approach, but with your employees as your customers, finding the right solution. And then it's going to change in a year, so you have to revisit it.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate in enrolling the team, and I think we're hybrid, kind of 2 core days a week, and I think at least half of the team probably comes in a little bit more. But we also practice something called weigh-in to buy-in. So it's important to capture everyone's feedback and sentiment, but we also need to make sure that we're all aligned that like we're going to discuss this, but we're going to come to one decision, and we're going to weigh everyone's perspectives. But it might not be the most popular for some people or detractors, but I do think that's really, really important, especially when we think about the case studies of companies that have done it and maybe hasn't gone that well, where it is something just implemented from the top down and it's not acknowledging the human component or the way people want to work, which can have a challenging whiplash effect because we're in a labor shortage too. I think that's well said, Mike. Give us some takeaways. What are a couple of pieces of advice to business leaders who are just starting out on their growth journey or stuck or at a critical moment where you could help them?
When it comes to people, I always come back to is the first thing that I'll come back to, and that is when you're starting to grow, you don't have the budgets to get the people you want, generally speaking, and you're often in the position of just feeling like you need warm bodies, and the more you can resist that, the better, in my opinion. I think anyone who's an entrepreneur who's built teams has made the mistake of bringing in the first person they find, and then they don't work out, and you're on a constant wheel of trying to find good people. The more you can slow down, establish the vision, establish a long and medium-term plan, structure the job you're trying to create as much as possible before you start interviewing, the better. Because that's just, it sounds like a 101 level thing, but literally every company and every entrepreneur makes this mistake. And so that would be the main thing. Yeah, we all have.
N of one. And Well, you've advised me on this too. I think we've gotten a lot more clarity around our 3-year highly achievable goal. But as we're looking to grow, I think you've been a great sounding board in balancing, how do we plan for the future and kind of look out onto the horizon, but make sure we don't trip over our own front feet as a business. And sometimes that can be over-investing or acknowledging where you're at from a maturity standpoint with some people and processes as well. I think that's really well said, that make sure that you understand the requirements and the needs of a role before just finding the next available person or overhiring or hiring a little too quickly. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, our annual theme for the year is slow down to speed up, but I think anything that is a 101 concept is just easier said than done.
Yeah. Yeah, and anything that's a 101 concept is a foundational concept, and that's another piece that just came to mind, which is do the really foundational stuff really well before moving on to sexy, shiny, new opportunities and ideas, because any company that's at the stage of starting to grow, like their growth journey, like you mentioned, building a team, all that stuff, it's very unlikely that something new and shiny is going to be where they need to spend their time. It's getting good at the basics and selling more of what they sell. And so avoiding shiny objects is another main takeaway that I would recommend for anyone on the growth journey.
There was a business leader that shared this with me. It's with growth comes complexity, yet complexity is the silent killer of growth. You know who said that, Mike?
Who?
You did. You did, my man.
I wish I made that up. That's a good line.
Thank you.
And it's true. Yeah, you got to simplify as you grow. That would be along those lines.
Well, I think you talked about it comes in phases too, right? Phases in your growth, whether that's positive upward to the right growth or hiccups along the way. That complexity and making sure that you do clarify and simplify things. It's so easy to be burdened with more people, more processes, more complexity. If you're able to simplify things and communicate that to the team and make sure they understand that simplified vision, I think you're in a good spot.
Oh yeah, that's the way to go.
Mike, what's another takeaway you have for business leaders?
The other one that comes to mind is, in addition to creating a long-term plan for the organization, like in EOS we call it a 10-year plan. Mm-hmm. You probably have a BHAG or whatever that long, simple vision is. You want to have that so that everyone can know where you're heading and want to be a part of, but it's also a really good idea to do some soul searching with your advisors, your partner, your family, and figure out what you, the entrepreneur, actually wants in the long run.
Yeah.
Because I've seen myself and so many other founders chase some objective that they think they're supposed to chase, but it's not actually really that related to what they really want in the long run. And if you can figure that out, you're going to build a better business.
There's a lot of mindfulness in that insight, and that very much aligns with my understanding of you. Like we're talking about it, you're facilitating an event that's all about mindfulness with a bunch of business leaders too, right?
So I spend all my time in the foundational managing people and structure side. What are some specific trends coming out in sales and marketing that I should know about?
Beyond AI.
Beyond AI.
Generative AI?
Beyond generative AI.
Okay. I think one that we've seen the past 12 to 18 months and actually refined some of our service offerings around is around data. And the ability to report on sales and marketing efforts as a whole. So online and offline, and more than just conversion, but that entire user journey or buyer's journey that might take a couple of years. So really looking at those directional indicators and making sure that we're leveraging all available first-party data for our clients. And that's what allows us to use things like AI or more advanced tools to model out scenarios that can give our clients not just data, but information and trends to lead to better informed decisions. I think we're coming to a close. Thank you so much for being our first guest on this Green Velvet Chat. I appreciate you're willing to pilot this with us. What are some ways that people can stay in touch and follow you?
Thanks, John. It's been awesome to be the first and not last guest. I'm on LinkedIn, very active on LinkedIn, Mike Jones. I also have a newsletter called The Lifestyle Entrepreneur that I post every week with tips on wellness, lifestyle, entrepreneurship. And I also would like to call out the types of people I like to work with. Yeah. So I like to work with entrepreneurs, leadership teams that are trying to grow and scale that are stuck. So they're trying to break through the ceiling, they're feeling stuck, they need help. If that's you, give me a call.
Great, Mike. And I can also say, you're always, I have the good fortune of getting to talk to you a little bit more consistently, but I will say that your LinkedIn content shares a lot of experience-based feedback, a lot of the same challenges that you and I have discussed and processed together, and your newsletter is solid. So the Lifestyle Entrepreneur is great as well. Mike, thank you for the time.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching our first of many future episodes of Green Velvet Chats. Please follow along for more updates and chats just like this. Also, if you have a hot take or someone that you'd like to highlight in a conversation like this, again, only important things in the Green Velvet Chats. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks.